Welcome to this DaVinci Resolve Fusion node breakdown. Today's node is part 3 of the camera tracker node. So we're going to jump into Fusion where we had our track from yesterday. And in VFX, when it comes to exporting and working with what we just tracked, we kind of want to think about what we're doing with this stuff. So with our track, what's our intent of our VFX? And obviously we're just making something quick on this. But with that said, the typical workflow, my typical workflow anyway, is to export our tracks and bring it into a 3D program like Houdini or Blender, do all my 3D work, render all my 3D items as EXRs, and then bring them back into Fusion and comp them all together. But Fusion does also allow you to work with this data within Fusion, which I don't often do, but you can do it. To see what our camera tracker just did in the 3D world, we're going to go ahead and start using this in the 3D environment within Fusion. And I know I haven't covered 3D stuff yet, so I'm really not going to go over the 3D nodes. I'm just going to kind of show the process of what we're doing. And then when we get back into the 3D nodes, we'll dig deeper into those and we'll really see what's going on within the 3D world in Fusion. But back to our nodes. So we've got our good solve. Now our next job is to export this data. Now this export tab up here does not export anything to other programs. So this isn't giving you export information like FBX or Olympic data or anything out of this node. This export is just to export and create 3D nodes for this camera tracker to use. So up top is our export button. If we click this, it's going to create nodes for us to use within Fusion. And I'm not going to click this yet. Over here, we have update previous export, which means if we exported this and it created all of our nodes and we had to come back into our camera tracker and go back and solve and fix something or remove something and get a better solve and then go back to our export, if we select this update previous export, it's just going to update all those existing 3D nodes. Additionally, you can select this auto update. So it says auto update export after solves, which means if we go back in and we resolve, it's automatically going to update all those nodes. But I tend to leave this unchecked because if I'm doing multiple solves, I don't want it to keep updating these nodes and being a little more taxing on my computer. I'd rather just update my previous export after I'm done resolving everything. And I'm going to skip this part right now. Now our export options, we have the option to export our camera, which is our tracked camera, our image plane, which is the actual footage. It'll export it as an image plane, our point cloud, which is all these little points, our ground plane, which is a ground plane we will create, and the renderer. Now, under our animation, we have the ability to animate the camera or animate the point cloud. And we're going to leave this on animate camera because we want our camera to move, because that works the best in 3D programs. Because if we selected animate point cloud, our camera would be still and all these points would be moving within our 3D environment. So it's much harder to chase all these points and put a 3D element when they're all moving. So it's better to animate your camera and make sure these stay still. Your previous export option is just going to show data on your previous exports. Meaning if we export this and then we make changes and we update our previous export, it's just going to populate this with data. Our ground plane options, we can select to show in view. This is after we set a ground plane. We can create a color, we can lock our width, we can change our size, and we can change the subdivision. And we don't have a ground plane yet, so we're not able to see this yet. Now, in order to create our ground plane, the first thing we want to do is kind of see what's going on. So I'm going to go up top here, and I'm going to grab this 3D merge node, or merge 3D node, and I'm going to bring it down. And what this merge 3D node is, I'm not going to get into all the 3D nodes, But this just allows us to merge all this 3D data that's about to be populated. And we need to take our scene output and input it into the background of our Merge 3D node. So now if I display what's going on in our Merge 3D node, you can see it just created all those 3D points along with our footage in the 3D world. So if I right click and I go to my camera, I can look at it from the perspective view, and you can see our camera is moving. I can right click and show it from the front and back to our actual camera view. So if you notice as we play this, our ground plane is this grid that's right here. So our ground plane hasn't been set yet. Additionally, this arrow is our point of origin, which we also haven't set yet. It's set at 0, 0, 0 in the 3D world. So we want to go ahead and set these two to match our scene. So to do that, we're going to go back to our camera tracker. And the first thing we want to do is go to our 3D scene transform and select unalign. So this way nothing is aligned and we can tell it where we want everything to be aligned. So our first one is our origin. So we need to pick a point that we want to consider our origin of the scene, meaning where that XYZ axis is going to sit so we can kind of monitor what's going on in our scene. So I'm going to pick something that I see is in our scene pretty much the entire time and kind of close to where we want to do our effects. So I'm going to zoom in here, and I think maybe something around here is what I'll pick as our point of origin. I'm just going to make sure one of those kind of stays the whole time, and it looks like this one right here in this little spot is staying. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to hit set from selection. So now this is our point of origin. The next thing we have to set is our ground plane. And this shot is kind of confusing because there's really no one ground plane. All we have is stairs. So we can kind of pick what we want to consider our ground plane. And I think I'm going to consider all this stuff on her, where her foot is on this step as our ground plane. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of these nodes on this little plane here, and I'm going to set from selection. And you do want to make sure selection is XZ plane on ground. And this will transcribe into almost every 3D software that we use. So some others require different stuff. So if you have to change it to X-axis right, X-axis up, go ahead and make those changes. But we're going to go ahead and leave it on XZ plane ground. So to define our scale, we need 2 points. So if we say select this point, hold our control button and select this point, we can hit set from selection, and you can make this 1, you can make this whatever you want to make it. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this a scale of 1. And all this is doing is it's just kind of locking our scale in. So now once we go back to our 3D world, let's switch our camera to perspective. You can see our ground plane and all that fun stuff changed, but to be able to really see that, what we need to do is go back to our camera and hit export. And when we exported it, just created all these new nodes. So let's go ahead and get this up here. So what it created is it created our camera, our 3D camera. It created our point clouds, which is all of our points. It created our ground plane, which is our little ground plane. It created a new Merge 3D node and a new camera track node. You can see it created all this, let me knock our ground plane back down. it created all of this additional info with our ground plane and our point of origin. So if we look at our camera, you can see it's now matching what we selected. So, and technically you can go through and get rid of all these, but I like to keep these just in case I have to update something and re-export anything out. So let's throw something into our Merge 3D. So let's grab a little shape, and we're going to create a sphere, and let's go ahead and merge that in. And let's look at what's going on. First thing we want to do is change the radius of our sphere. And move our sphere because it's obviously right in front of our camera. So there we go. We can change it back up. And as you see, we can change our camera view to see where our sphere is in our little scene here. So you can see these are our steps going up. And if we want to say place it on one of them steps or our ground plane, we can just manipulate that sphere till it's sitting on our ground plane. Let's go ahead and change our size up a little bit because it's a little large. Let's set that on our ground plane. So now if we go to our camera, look in our camera view, we can manipulate this. And if we play, we can see our little sphere is sitting on top of our step. So this is how you would add elements within Fusion. And like I said, I'm not going to get into the shading and all that stuff. But we can go ahead and copy our sphere and put it into our 3D merge. And if we look at our merge, we can move this over. So she's got one on this side. Now if we look at our camera track, she's got two spheres sitting next to her in the 3D world. So within Fusion, we can do other things. So we can disconnect our little shape nodes. And if we brought in a image plane, and we could bring in say some media and input our little graphic into our media. We can then input this into our merge. And if we look at what's going on, let's go ahead and change our camera view to perspective to see where our little plan is. We can move this. Let's change it to the left. And she's right around there. Let's go ahead and go back to our camera view. And we can manipulate our little plant here. So within the image plane, we can transform our scale. And we can drop that down to make it look like it's coming out of the cracks there. And let's go ahead and copy that. Let's paste another one. this in, connect it. Let's see, move this one over. So now if we look at our footage, we just added 2 little plants. So this is the kind of stuff you can do within Fusion. And obviously we'd add lights, and so we had shadows and all that stuff on this. But we will get into that when we start getting into 3D nodes. So tomorrow we will go over using the FBX exporter. And we will use this to export our FBX and bring it into a 3D program like Blender or Houdini. So I will see you in tomorrow's node breakdown.